Yeah.
Oh,
I picked it up and they went, ooh, a hat.
call me Dapper Dan.
My head is shaped funny, hats don't look right.
Yeah, I got the same kind of deal. Which is strange for somebody that don't normally wear a hat, that used to collect hats. My work at Specco, you know,
be a song that you sing dragging, should it? Jesus, 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 sweet is his name I know. No. Fills my every longing, keeps me singing as I go. Now, ain't that a difference? Which one is you tonight? I'm asking that question while Michael's yawning. So Michael's had a rough day. Anyway, it's good to have you all here with us at church tonight for Bible study, prayer meeting. Prayer part comes first. And I am glad we have a God who hears our prayers. We made it through the ice cream social, and wasn't the ice cream good? I thoroughly enjoyed it, and I'd not eaten a lot of sugar until we had that, and I had my cupcake, and I had had 2 scoops of ice cream, and I was on a sugar high all night long. I couldn't hardly sleep. So, got some good sleep the next night though. Men, mark it down. July 26th will be our men's fellowship in the fellowship hall, and we're going to have breakfast, and we're going to have a Bible lesson, and then we'll just talk about some things that need doing and how to get them done. So that will be on the 26th of July. And now for our prayer requests, where do we need to start? Let's just start on the front row and move back. How's Miss Dale doing?
I think she's doing pretty good. She's still down at the nieces, and they still trying to get straightened out, I think. But other than that, I think she's doing pretty good.
How's Denise getting along?
She went to the doctor the other day about her eyes, I believe she said, and they told her they hadn't gotten any worse.
Well, that's good news.
What she's got, they told her that unless some miracle happened, she would probably go blind before she passed away. She was at the house the other day, and she seemed like she's doing pretty good. Since Dale went down and stayed with her a little while, she's beginning to get out just a little bit.
Well, that's good.
Maybe she get out and come to church.
Well, now the real trouble one, how's Joe doing?
Oh, he's doing okay. I'm still making it.
I'm glad you're making it, brother.
I'm still walking straight up right now.
Well, keep that up. Practice. It'll be good for you.
As long as I don't fall, I'll be fine.
All right. Continue to pray for Miss Carolyn, Tony and Amy, and Rick, and Melissa, Savannah, Tyler. Pray for all of them up there. Pray for Miss Carolyn that her hearing will get a little better. We're going to try and play around and see if we can't get a hold of something that will help folks in the service here hear a little bit better, because we got a couple of folks that really struggle. So we'll be working toward that end. You know me, I'm a cheapskate. There's a gadget that you can get, and it runs about $1,500. Then they got a lot cheaper one that you can get for about $400, but I'm thinking we might have something here that'll work for less than that. So we're going to play around. We're not going to pull the trigger on any of it right away, but we'll see if we can get something that will help our folks hear a little bit better in the services. So y'all pray that my tinkering will work out okay, and there won't be a loud bang and a flash of light, and pray that it'll all go well. Continue to pray for Miss Vicki. She's still recovering, still hurting, but pray for her. And pray for Chastity. Chastity's got a job interview. Let's pray that that goes well. So some good things there and some things to recover from. Continue to pray for James. Continue to pray for Hannah. Pray for Miss Alice's uncle and his recovery. Continue to pray for Charlie and Aya. Look there, and I miss that they're not here. Pray for their strength. Pray for God's grace. And just pray for them. We want to pray for Debbie and Vicky's mom and her health issues. We want to pray for Miss Pat, just because Miss Pat. And let's see. Pray for Thomas and Whitney. They're working on moving, and that's a blessing. You find stuff that you forgot you had when you start packing up and moving around. Thomas said he had to get out and dig his potatoes, and so that had prompted me to go dig some of my potatoes. But Thomas is wearing a heart monitor. Pray that that shows what's going on. Pray that it's nothing too severe, but pray for Thomas. Let's see. Pray for Sabrina's niece. I haven't heard any updates since Sunday, but she was in the hospital with heart issues. So pray for them. And do pray for Miss Berita Maynard. Got cancer. And God knows what he's doing. I trust him. I don't always understand, but I do trust him. So you pray for Miss Berita Maynard. Pat's daughters are traveling. Are they on the road yet? Oh, they're already home. All right. Very good. Glad to hear that. And church, pray for revival. My heart is burdened. I want God to stir us. It's so easy just to get comfortable. And the older I get, the more comfortable I am sitting in my house, and that's the last place I need to be. I knew when I bought that real comfortable recliner, it was going to be the death of me, and it's working on it. And I know I should get up and move, and I do occasionally. When Betty says, get out of the house, I'd get up and move. And she doesn't tell me that. She doesn't slam cabinet doors anymore either, that I noticed. Have you been slamming cabinet doors? I just haven't noticed. Pray for revival. Our church needs revival. That's not a bad idea. I might have to do that. All right, other prayer requests tonight.
I'd like for y'all to pray for my niece Monica. Not sure if it's pray for her salvation. But also my uncle was going to get to come home this week, but he got hurt really bad in his leg, and he has a really bad bleed in his leg.
Oh.
With blood clot. They've had to go in and get him blood transfusion. So they have to go in and stop that bleeding tomorrow.
Yeah. Sounds not good when you have blood clots and a bleed. That's one treatment sets the other one off. So pray for him, and do pray for Monica. Anyone else? All right, well, let's go to the Lord in prayer. Pray for one another. Just look around. I didn't mention Linda and Teddy. I didn't get back that far, but pray for Linda and Teddy. The 11th is when he's got his procedure. Miss Linda is just not feeling well at all either, so pray for Miss Linda. It's good to see their daughter and grandson, son-in-law here Sunday. Pray that they'll come back too. All right. Well, Brother Michael, how about leading us in prayer tonight?
Gracious Heavenly Father, we thank you for this day, Lord. Thank you for your precious blood, Lord, you shed at Calvary for us. Dear Lord, I ask you to please look upon each and every request and burden on the heart. Once it's in the hospitals, once it's going through physical ailments, Lord, you please be with them. Dear Lord, I ask you to touch Monica, Lord, you please get a hold of her heart, Lord, and show her where she's at. And Lord, I ask you to please touch Gospel Mission Baptist Church and be what you'll have it to be, Lord. And Lord, I ask you to touch this country, touch our leaders, things that are going on. And Lord, touch our pastors tonight as he brings the word. Will lead us as you see fit, in Jesus' name.
All right, we will continue our Bible study tonight on the life of Christ. We've got one more lesson after tonight. And then we'll be moving on to something else. I haven't quite completely decided yet, so I'll just surprise you with it. Hello? Oh, I can fix it from here. See, it's all fixed. I believe that got turned up a little bit. All righty. Tonight, we're going to be looking, last Wednesday, we finished up right as Christ died on the cross. Remember? He dismissed his spirit, and he died. Well, what happens between there and the resurrection? Well, as far as people on earth are concerned, it didn't seem to be a whole lot, I guess. Everybody kind of thought it was over. His disciples, they didn't know what to do. They scattered to begin with, and then they kind of came back together a little bit, but they were worried because if they killed Jesus, don't you think the disciples would be next on the list? Yeah. Well, turn to John chapter 19. We're going to look at the series of events. What happened? That was the bench, wasn't it? Sounded like a duck from here. Miss Alice brought that chicken out, that rubber chicken. Okay, John chapter 19, verse number 31. This happened right after he died. The Jews, therefore, because it was the preparation that the body should not remain upon the cross on the Sabbath day, for that Sabbath day was an high day, besought Pilate that their legs might be broken and that they might be taken away. I want you to notice it was preparation day. Now, Brother Joe, you believe the crucifixion happened on a Wednesday, right?
I'm not sure.
Well, I'm not sure, but my opinion is Thursday. And I thought we had discussed this at one time, and you might have gone with Wednesday.
It could have been Wednesday. It could have been Thursday. No.
Yeah.
If your days start in the evening instead of in the morning.
Mm-hmm. The author that I'm reading after, he is adamantly convinced that it was Wednesday. I kind of lean more toward this being Thursday. Either way, it wasn't on Friday, okay? Because Saturday was the Sabbath day. This preparation day was for a high day. This was for the Passover, which would be the day before. And so that's why I kind of lean toward Thursday being the day of the crucifixion. Then you have Friday as the Passover high day or Sabbath. And then you have Saturday as the Sabbath day, and then Sunday, the day of resurrection. You and I agree that Sunday was resurrection day. Yeah. Okay, everything else is good. Preparation day. They had to prepare the lamb for the Passover. They had to prepare the bread. This was the day. And preparation day was the day that Christ was crucified. And so it's preparation day. Here's these three men, all of them Jewish men it appears, hanging on crosses. And then this Passover Sabbath day is coming up, starting at 6 o'clock. It's about 3 o'clock in the afternoon now, and everybody's starting to panic. What a sacrilege for these men to be hanging out there on a cross. Normally, they leave them for days. But no, not during the Passover. We don't mind killing an innocent man, but we sure don't want him out there on the Passover because that's wrong. You see the double standard? So they desired to remove the bodies from the crosses, but before they could do that, these men had to die. They were condemned to die. Okay. It says also in verse 31 that this was a high day tomorrow, the next day, or starting at 6 p.m. That's why I think the next day, Friday, was the Passover feast, the high day, and then a regular Sabbath day on Saturday. You know, that don't mean a whole lot. That's what eggheads sit around and argue about. But can I tell you what really matters? Christ died on the cross for my sin. He was buried, and he rose again the third day for my justification. That's what's important. Exactly what time of day it was, and we know it was 3 o'clock, but exactly what day it was, Thursday, Friday, it doesn't matter, because he died, and then he rose again from the dead. You want to know how I know he died? Well, verse 32, then came the soldiers and brake the legs of the first and of the other which was crucified with him. But when they came to Jesus and saw that he was dead already, they brake not his legs. But Roman soldiers knew about death. And they knew you might pass out, but he had a surefire way of making sure you were dead. Look what it says. Verse 34, but one of the soldiers with a spear pierced his side, and forthwith came there out blood and water. He shoved a spear up in him. And the accounts that I read, it came up through and more than likely pierced the sac surrounding his heart. That's where the water came from. You think even if you're passed out, that might cause you to flinch? Jesus was dead already. And if he weren't dead, that kind of a wound he would die in short order. So we can be certain that he was dead on whatever day this was. He was dead. Now, what happened, we just read about right here. I want you to go back to Psalm 34, verse 20. And I want you to look at the prophecy that's there. They're after you, Brother Joe. They're after you. Your car warranty may be about to expire. Psalm 34. Verse number 20 says this, he keepeth all his bones, not one of them is broken. This was written hundreds of years before Christ died on the cross. The soldiers went out there and broke the other men's legs so that they would suffocate in short order and be done. They didn't break Jesus' legs. Prophecy fulfilled. Now turn to Zechariah chapter 12. You get to the book of Malachi, you've gone one too far. Zechariah chapter number 12. Verse number 10. And I will pour upon the house of David and upon the inhabitants of Jerusalem the spirit of grace and of supplications. And they shall look upon me. You see how that is? Reads right there. Whom they have pierced. And they shall mourn for him as one mourneth for his only son, and shall be in bitterness for him as one that is in bitterness for his firstborn. Part of this verse has been fulfilled, but not all of this verse has been fulfilled. Zechariah, roughly 500 years before Jesus died on the cross, prophesied that he would be pierced, him whom they have pierced. But the spirit of grace and supplications hasn't yet been poured out on Israel. They're still in disbelief. And they do not mourn for Christ as of yet, but they will. The day will come when they will see him and they will recognize him for who he is, the Messiah who came and they rejected. How would you like to be one of those Jews whose eyes are opened to the Messiah? It's coming. It's coming. All right, back in the book of John. even after he was dead, they came making sure and mutilated his body just to be absolutely certain. But they didn't break any bones. Then we get down to verse 38. And after this, Joseph of Arimathea, being a disciple of Jesus, he was also a member of the Sanhedrin, but he kept it quiet, secretly for fear of the Jews. So Joseph of Arimathea was a secret disciple of Jesus. We might have some of them running around today. I don't want anybody to know that I'm a Christian. I just want to be me. And if I run up against another Christian, well, here, I'm a Christian. Secret handshake. We shake our head at something like that. But Joseph was maintaining his place while still believing what Jesus taught. He was a disciple of Jesus, but he kept it a secret. Well, he besought Pilate that he might take away the body of Jesus. And Pilate gave him leave. He came therefore and took the body of Jesus. So Joseph approached Pilate for Jesus' body. He stepped out of the shadows now. Where was he during the trial? I'm glad he stepped out of the shadows now. He has a part to play. And there's another man who has a part to play too. Verse 39, there came also Nicodemus, which at the first came to Jesus by night. You really need to go ahead and buy that warranty, brother. The book of John is the only book that mentions Nicodemus. The book of John mentions Nicodemus 3 times, and this is the third one. And what does Nicodemus do here? Well, it says that he brought a mixture of myrrh and aloe, about 100-pound weight. So I want you to notice here that Joseph of Arimathea gets Jesus' body. The book of Matthew then tells us that Joseph provided the tomb that Jesus was laid in. It was a tomb that no man had been laid in yet. It suggests that this Joseph of Arimathea was a wealthy man and could afford to have hewn out of the rock his tomb. So Joseph, in addition to claiming the body of Jesus for burial, provided the tomb, but notice that Nicodemus provided the spices. Now, 100 pounds of spices is way more than necessary to prepare a body for burial. And some people speculate there might be one of 2 reasons for it. The first one being that they knew it was going to be a couple of days before they could get back, and maybe just really loading down this body would keep it from decomposing too quickly. That's one. The one I tend to like better, whether it's more accurate or not, the speculation is that out of sincere, deep respect for Jesus, Nicodemus brought an overabundance of spices. I believe that encounter that Nicodemus had with Jesus way back there in John chapter 3 left an indelible mark on Nicodemus' life. You know, how many gospel messages have you heard preached out of John chapter 3? How many times has preachers mentioned John 3:16 that Jesus said to Nicodemus? There was power in that meeting. And now here at the end, Nicodemus is there with Jesus' body, and 100 pounds of these spices would not have been cheap. But for Jesus, it was worth it. So the myrrh and the aloes, 100 pounds was far more than they needed. But you've been in that situation too where, well, it seems like what I give is an overabundance, but then on the other hand, it's not enough. I think that's where Nicodemus was at. Now, we're moving through this lesson pretty quick. Matthew chapter 27. This all happened somewhere between 3 and 6 p.m. on the day of the crucifixion. Lots of stuff happening fast, huh? You got to get Jesus down off the cross and got to get him in the tomb, because that high day is coming quickly in just a matter of a few hours. Matthew 27, verse 62. Now, the next day, this would actually be on the high day. The next day that followed the day of the preparation, the chief priests and Pharisees came together unto Pilate. They didn't mind approaching a Gentile during their high day. That would normally have made them unclean, but this was important work, so they made an exception to their religion for practical purposes. Here was the purpose that they really needed to take care of. They came to Pilate saying, "Sir, we remember that deceiver said while he was yet alive, 'After 3 days I will rise again.'" They knew his teachings. They remembered Jesus' prophecy. Destroy this temple, and in 3 days, I'll raise it again. At the time, you know what they said? It took years. It took 40 years to build this temple, and you're going to tear it down and build it back in 3 days? But he was talking about his body. They knew. The truth has a way of of coming out. People know the truth, even if they want to argue against it. And boy, don't we live in a day and age where people are going to argue against the truth. Yep. Okay, they knew it. They knew what he'd said. And so they lined themselves up to oppose Jesus even in death. Okay? Verse 64, this is what they asked of Pilate. "Command therefore that the sepulchre be made sure until the 3rd day, lest his disciples come by night and steal him away and say unto the people, 'He is risen from the dead.' So the last error shall be worse than the first." Yep, he's dead now, but those sneaky disciples, they'll come and they'll steal his body. They're a devious bunch. He picked the low ones. Well, you don't see any Pharisees being his disciples, do you? Except Joseph of Arimathea and Nicodemus. You don't see any respectable people being his disciples. Yeah, you do. But these 12 fishermen, plain old ordinary folks. Isn't it amazing how plain old ordinary folks seem to hear the King of Kings clearer than the learned or the powerful? Because they don't have all of their self-worth getting in the way. Pharisees, then they said, well, let's just go ahead and we'll seal this tomb, make it sure, that way they can't come in and steal his body. And then after 3 days are gone, we'll laugh it up. The last will be worse than the first. He prophesied this, but we're going to shut it down. In essence, what these men were doing, don't forget, they're religious. They are pious. They believe they're doing God's will. Isn't it amazing how Satan can take the things of God and twist them all around and make people think they're doing God's will? These men, these religious men, were protecting the Jews from what they considered to be a false prophet. But in fact, What they were doing was lining themselves up against God himself. So command therefore that the sepulchre be made sure until the third day, lest his disciples come by night and steal him away and say unto the people, he is risen from the dead. So the last error shall be worse than the first. And Pilate had more sense than they did. Pilate, a Gentile governor, but Pilate said, I find no fault in this man, and yet still condemned him to die. Look what Pilate says in verse number 65. Pilate said unto them, ye have a watch. Here's the soldiers. Go your way and make it as sure as you can. Do your best, boys. These soldiers were probably part of the temple guard. They've been right around this place anyway. Now just, okay, these soldiers, they're Roman soldiers. They'll spend the night out there in front of the tomb, won't bother them. Nobody's going to bother Roman soldiers. And the Bible tells us in other places they set a seal. Nobody's going to bother that tomb. Nobody's going to break in and steal Jesus' body. Make it as sure as you can. So, that's what they did. Aren't you glad you know the end of the story? If you had been the disciples, I'm getting ahead of myself. I'm going to teach next week's lesson. I better be careful. But, you know, all we want to do is show respect. I'm sure the disciples were thinking that. We can't make him comfortable, but we can do the things for him we would do for any other that had died. We want to be able to just do out of respect for him. And they're barred at every turn. I'm sure they felt distraught. I'm sure they began to wonder, there's nowhere to turn. You know, we couldn't protect him. We couldn't prevent it. And now that he's dead, we can't even show respect. Stop and think about this. There was no funeral service. He's rushed down off the cross, thrown in the tomb. Now, the next day, the tomb is sealed. Nobody's getting near it. Now, on this next day, the Pharisees, after they finish their dirty work, they're over here presiding over this great Passover meal. Can't you see it now? Oh, how good God has been. Oh, my friend, how good God has been, and what have you done? So, that's what has happened. Well, now, where do you think Jesus was during all of this? We sometimes think about our loved ones that have gone on. And I can comfort you with this fact. There is no such thing as soul sleep. They are not asleep waiting to be wakened. The Bible says asleep, meaning that their bodies are there, but where are they? Well, where was Jesus during all of this? Have you thought about that? The Bible doesn't say a whole lot about it, but it does give us two clues. John chapter 20 is one of those clues. Verse number 17, you know this one. Mary Magdalene, gone to the tomb, hoping that somebody will roll the stone away so she can do those things for Jesus that they would do for any other loved one that was dead. And when she got there, the stone was rolled away. The guards had scattered. Nobody was there. Jesus' body wasn't there. And she was heartbroken. She thought Jesus was the gardener. She said, just tell me where he's at. I won't tell anybody else. Just tell me where he's at. And verse 16, Jesus said unto her, Mary. And she knew who he was. But I want you to notice verse 17. Jesus saith unto her, Touch me not, for I am not yet ascended to my Father. That's a clue. Jesus had not been to heaven yet. Okay? Now, some people get really hung up over this. Don't touch me, because I haven't been to my Father yet. He's not saying, don't touch me. What he's really saying is, let go of me. You can imagine when she heard him and knew who he was, she grabbed hold of him. He's telling her here that their relationship is different. Stop clinging to me is what he's really saying. For I am not yet ascended to my Father. The relationship's going to be altogether different now. But then he tells her, Go to my brethren and say unto them, I ascend unto my Father and your Father, and to my God and your God. So you hear how the relationship now is going to change? All of a sudden, we're brought up. I'm going to my God and your God. I'm going to my Father and your Father. So we know, first of all, during this time that Jesus had not yet been to heaven. Okay, well, where has he been? 1 Peter chapter 3. We'll look at verse number 18. I like what it says here. For Christ also hath once suffered for sins, the just for the unjust, once, that he might bring us to God, being put to death in the flesh, but quickened by the Spirit. When you're baptized, you go into the place of death, and then you are raised to new life. Baptism doesn't carry any saving significance, but it is following the Lord Jesus. It's your first step in obedience. And you come up out of that water, raised to life anew. When you get saved, your spirit gets quickened. When you get saved, you become a part of the family. All right. Christ hath once suffered for sins. Verse 19 says, By which also he went and preached unto the spirits in prison. That's where he was. So he preached, he proclaimed what had happened to those that were in prison, which sometimes were disobedient when once the long suffering of God waited in the days of Noah, while the ark was preparing, wherein few, that is 8 souls, were saved by water. The like figure whereunto even baptism doth now also save us, not the putting away of the filth of the flesh, but the answer of a good conscience toward God by the resurrection of Jesus Christ. So what do you think Jesus was preaching to those folks there who were held in captivity? He wasn't preaching the gospel. The gospel is for our age, the good news that death, burial, and resurrection. But what he was preaching was the fact that he was victorious. God's plan had played out just like it was supposed to. All of those folks from Adam, Moses, on up through the prophets, he told them the same thing that he said on the cross. It is finished. It is done. Boy, oh boy, when you read that story about Lazarus, on one side Lazarus in Abraham's bosom, they call it, place of care and waiting. That's where Jesus went. On the other side of that great gulf was the rich man being in torment. And they could see across. My goodness, what did those folks on the wrong side of the great gulf, what then must they have thought with all the shouting that was going on over there where Jesus was at? Yep. So that's what Jesus did from the time he died till the time he was raised from the dead. He didn't go back to heaven. He went to that place that the Bible refers to as paradise or Abraham's bosom. And he preached the victory to those saints that were there. All right, everybody got all your blanks filled in? So y'all know what the last part of the story is, right? We talked about everything he did preparing for the crucifixion. We talked about the crucifixion. We've talked about what happened between the crucifixion and the resurrection. Next week we're going to start with the resurrection and just finish it out. There's about a month and a half that Jesus walked this earth after his resurrection. And lots of people saw the resurrected Jesus. And once they got a glimpse of the resurrected Jesus, they were never going back. They knew he was dead, but now they know he's alive. I am still amazed when I read or think about the fact that these 11 disciples that remained, all of them died a martyr's death with the exception of John, and none of them ever said that it was a lie. They would rather be tortured. They would rather die than say that it was a lie, that Jesus really didn't rise from the dead. You want to know how strongly that speaks to the truth? It sure does. Paul met him on the road to Damascus, and Paul never would renounce the fact that this Jesus that he persecuted was now alive. Folks, we may have to go through the grave, but we won't get stuck in the grave. Aren't you glad? And I'm not sure exactly where we're going to be when we die, but it will be with the Lord. And that's good enough for me. It sure is a whole lot better than here, where I can sense him. I can just almost touch him. But then I'll see him. Talk about some shouting. I think I can put some of them Old Testament saints to shame at that point. Much rather he'd just come take me now. Wouldn't you? We can just all go together. All right, let's get out of here. Brother Johnny, dismiss us, would you?